The questions you have as we speak, and let's do it.
And we do have a hot mic. I think that mic must be hot. And so if you have a question when we get ready to call for questions, please write them down and then come down so everyone can hear you. That's just, we forget to repeat them. And so come down and say your question from the mic. Okay, I'm just going to start out with my story. I have never been we have a video we did that's going to be, yeah, this is just going to be kind of be that video, and then we'll talk about it. And so my mental health journey has never been positive. I was never a depressed person. I would never say was anywhere near clinically depressed. But I was never a happy person. I read an article once, and it talked about type D personalities, people who not depressed, not clinical, but not happy and bubbly by any means either. And I think that was me on the lower end of the happiness level. And life was never, life turned into drudgery and work and family, and I love my family very much, and loved everything about it, but it was never bubbly. I think that's a fair statement. And then I got on the road, and when I found living in a van, my life drastically improved. My outlook on life drastically improved. I lived for 6 years in a van, and I was much, much happier in the van than I'd ever been before, ever. Although it was going through a very traumatic time I was going through a divorce and fighting about the kids. But once all that got settled out, and we did get that settled out, and my ex-wife and I became better friends than we had ever before. We were better friends then. And we worked out our relationship and worked out our lives together and parenting our sons. And I was happier living in the van than I've ever been. And I kept watching the people I worked with and the people I knew, and came to realize that most of them weren't very happy with their lives. They were just enduring their lives, going to a job they hated every day, worried about money, and just enduring life and getting through the best they could. I think that describes the vast majority of us, just enduring life, getting through it the best we can. And it certainly described me. I can only speak for myself. And then after a while, I remarried, and that was a disaster and was not very happy, and moved into a house and despised every second I spent in the house. Didn't want it out as soon as I could. Came out onto public land, got out of that marriage and started living on public land and living in my van. And that went much better. For one of the few times in my life I experienced joy, and moments of being in nature brought me so much joy. It was good, really good. The only time I was sad was really happy. And then 2011, my son took his life, one of my oldest sons, my oldest son. I have two sons, my oldest son took his life. And as you can imagine, that kind of puts a downer on your whole life experience in a way that few things do. Been through the divorce already and the fighting about the kids, and that was pretty horrible, but this was something at another level. And that my son took his life on May 1st of 2011. On August, I had a horrendous motorcycle accident. Demolished my elbow, demolished my wrist on my right arm. And I've always wondered if that was a suicide attempt. I'll never know. It was completely unconscious. If it was, I'm not aware of it. I had not coped well with the death of my son, and I wondered if that wasn't. I was finally going to cope with it in that way, and I don't know. But I was then laying flat on my back for several months in constant pain relief, pain medication. Then I was in rehab, which was very, very painful. And then one day my physical therapist told me that, and at that time, now I have, I had a fantastic doctor. At that time, that was as close as I could get to my forehead or my head, and my fingers were locked. Couldn't move any of my fingers, couldn't touch my face, my shoulder locked up from lack of use. And he told me, I don't know why you can't move. I don't see any reason. This may be permanent. And so when I drove home that night, it was just too much. I said to a higher power, as I understand the higher power, that I'm done. I'm done. You take care of this, or I'm done. I'm ending my life. I'm going to kill myself. And I meant it with everything that was in me. And the only reason I could think of to keep waking up in the morning was my dog, and I thought I was pretty content I could find a good home for him. And within that week, a guy I just barely knew wrote me and said he was going to come and camp with me, and he did, and we camped together continuously for the next year, and that was enough. That was enough. I was not going to take my life. Responsibility to him, having a friend, I don't know. He never knew any of this. I never told anyone. I was completely alone in my desolation. And so things turned around. And so I kept waking up every morning, and every morning the question was a constant every day of my life for the many years was, why am I alive today in a world when my son is dead? No answer. And so this is the answer. If I'm going to be alive, there'd better be a good reason the next morning, and you are the reason. And so in 2011, starting in 2011, I started doing more and more things. We started the forum, and the forum was a tremendous impact on people's lives. And we had our first summer RTR. The RTR was already going. That was the second RTR after I broke my arm. We had our first summer RTR. I started the forum. YouTube was still far ahead in the future, but that was to come. I became more active and involved in people's lives, and finding a reason every day when I could say, when the came up to my head that day again, why am I alive in a world in which my son isn't? That was the answer. I can help people, and as long as there's someone I can help, I should be alive. And Steve was there. Steve saved my life. Thank you. The higher power that brought Steve into my life and gave me a purpose, because I would not be here otherwise. And so it just happened. It just kept going through a lot of deep depression for a very long time. And sometime last year, I became aware that the depression decreased with time. It was 100% of the time for years. And then it was half the time for a year or two. And then it was less, and it would just come on and then go away. And then it would be, sometime last year, I realized I was depression free. And that was, I had been depressed in a very long time. And I don't know, again, but beyond that, it was the three people a higher power brought into my life to do this with, and the bond that we found together. And so I'm here, and I'm grateful, very, very grateful. And so when Joanne Shortell came to me a couple years ago now, and said she was working with depression, and my son was schizophrenic. He'd never been diagnosed. We couldn't get him to a doctor. But there was no question in anyone's mind that we've talked to about it since, or at that time, and we did everything we could to get him. There are good medicines for schizophrenia now. The schizophrenics tend not to take them because they're not the same person anymore. But there was no question. And so that's what was going on. And so when Joanne came to me some time back, and talked to me about her journey and her work to offer help to people with depression and bipolar and anxiety and all of it. And to some degree, I think schizophrenia.
It'll definitely, yes.
I won't put words in your mouth. That's, I told her I'd do anything I could, that I would help in any way I can, and so we're sitting here today. And I know probably the most of you that is not it's a foreign story. I won't ask for a show of hands, but if I said, have you been depressed in your life, and has depression been a major factor, I think many, many hands would go up. And are you out here because it's better for your mental health? I think there would be many, many hands would go up. And we live alone with that, and that's so horrible to live alone with that, and that's what I did, and I wish I hadn't for so long. And I hope that we'll sit up here and tell our stories, and maybe it'll help a few people. And I know what Joanne is doing can change lives in ways that I can't even begin to imagine, although I keep trying. And so, Joanne, why don't you tell your story?
Okay, my story is, sorry. My story is quite different than Bob's, but that's one of the things that we find out here is that there are a lot of us and our stories are very different from one another. I have bipolar disorder in my family. My grandmother took lithium. My dad was a violent alcoholic, and that probably had a lot to do with what was going on inside his head. And I grew up in a very violent household. And about 14 years old, I started to wake up to the fact that we weren't normal. You know, Dad wasn't normal, Mom wasn't normal, none of us kids were normal, and this was not a good thing. And my dad was in the hospital because of some alcohol-related physical problems, and that gave me the space to take an overdose at 14 that was meant to end my life. It was not a cry for help. It was get me the F out of here. And I failed, and I decided that was really traumatic. It was really difficult to do that, and it was very scary because I was looking the end in the face at 14. And so I thought, you know, before I do this again, I'm going to try and get through life, because I can always do it again later, you know, but I can't undo it if I do it, and it's a mistake. So I started to try to work with it. And my life proceeded in a very complicated fashion. I got married on my 18th birthday and had a baby 10 months later. You know, I wasn't even smart enough to wait until I was pregnant to get married. I got married in high school. And I ended up having to try to fight for custody of my little sister at about 18 also. She was about 16. And so it was a really tough start. And then I was a teenage mom. And I was an 18-year-old married to a 19-and-a-half-year-old cop. And so you can figure the odds on that being a happy thing. But I did. I picked myself up because I had to. And the thing that kept me alive at that point was the fact that I had a son. It wasn't his fault he was here, so I darn well better take care of him, and I can't take care of him if I'm dead. And I went on for decades, you know, sort of scrabbling through life. I discovered that I was good at technology and good at working, and I could make money. So I did that I was really good at, and you know, just kept dealing with the PTSD from the bad situation at home and the bipolar disorder that I didn't know that I had, but I did back then. And just kept going. And eventually I had another kid, and about 9 months later, my gynecologist said to me, you know those headaches you keep complaining about that are coming with your period? I think it's because you're depressed. He says, and I have this friend who's a psychiatrist, and he can help you. And I went to him, and you know, he told me, hey lady, did you know that kids who have moms who are depressed grow up to be kids and adults who are depressed. And so, and did you know it works on adopted kids? It's not the genes. Now that, frankly, is rather dubious information. Don't take that home with you. But that's what he told me when I was about 21 years old. And I thought, well, darn it, I can't have my kids grow up feeling like this. I can't do that, so I better do something about this. So he prescribed me antidepressants, and I took them. And it wasn't a good thing. And periodically through the rest of my life, that kept happening to me. People would say to me, not people, doctors would say, you're depressed, and they gave me. I had a really good career. I was making lots of money, got rid of that husband, kept the kids for a while, then had a nasty custody suit, and on. Not a lot of fun. And all through this, I am suicidal the whole time. You know, it's like when the kids are gone, I'm gone. But I got to stick around and do what I need to do. And about my 40s, I had a good decade where I felt less suicidal because I was having a really wonderful life with my career, and my kids were kind of grown up and getting grown up and that sort of thing. And then the last antidepressant threw me into mania. And they've been doing that to me all along in a lower level, but the doctors never caught it, and I never caught it because I was too functional. People just assumed that the only thing wrong with me was the depression, and when I got undepressed, that was a good thing, but it wasn't. I was actually becoming hypomanic. And when that happens, you cycle faster and faster and higher and lower and higher and lower. And on top of that, the bipolar drugs that work for some people to some degree don't work at all for a lot of us who get there. Who get in this situation. So I ended up completely disabled. I was totally unable to work, and I'm a workaholic, so that's not good. And I went through 5 years working with a top-notch psychiatrist who finally figured out that I actually had bipolar disorder. We looked for 5 years for drugs that would even take the edge off some, that I could maybe go back to work in a grocery store as a clerk, you know, as opposed to running multi-million-dollar projects, which was what I had been doing. And we finally ended. I was so super sensitive to the drugs that a couple of them almost killed me. They weren't helping at all. I was getting worse. My physical stuff was getting worse. And finally, I ended up on the floor of my apartment for 3 days due to a reaction to a drug, where I couldn't put my head together enough to call the ambulance. And so I just crawled around on the floor for 3 days. And that was it. I called up the doctor and I said, you know, I can't do this anymore. If you have something up your sleeve that might have some reasonable possibility of getting me back to work, you tell me about it now, because I think I'm done. And she said, I don't have anything. And I'd always assumed that if I worked as hard as I could at getting better, and if I found a good doctor and I was willing to work with her and be honest with her and that sort of thing, that she'd be able to do something that would not cure me, not make me well, but at least get me back to where I could resume life in normal society, because I was pretty isolated. And it was devastating to hear that that wasn't true from the mouth of that very good doctor. And luckily, I had heard about this group called Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance, and they had support group meetings in a city near me, and I started going. Well, I figured out what I'm going to do, and it was the first time I ever sat in a room full of people like me. And I'd worked with a few of us. A lot of people in tech industry have bipolar disorder, but we don't talk about it, and we might not, like me, I didn't even know I had it. But I never sat around and talked to people about, oh my God, I haven't been able to shower in a week. Oh my God, I couldn't get out of bed last week. I haven't eaten in 2 days. I'd never been able to say that. And, you know, and that's not all we talked about. We joked about, you know, we had a hilarious session one time about hypersexuality. One of the things that can happen to you when you get on the high side of the bipolar disorder is you become hypersexual and everybody's attractive. It's like, that last hour at the bar, at 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. So we had we've had funny conversations about that. But mostly we were talking about getting along with our kids. And we were talking about, could we find a job? We're talking about, what do you do when you're so depressed you can't get out of bed? What do you do? We're just talking about how do we live? And we became friends. And so we talked about, how's your hobby going? And you're still dating that guy and that sort of thing. And it was so wonderful to be in an environment where people got me and where I was normal in that environment. And and I got to see people who were in much worse shape than I was, doing things that I didn't think I could do. The former president of the person who was president back then, had schizoaffective disorder, which is a combination of schizophrenia and bipolar. She was going and earning her master's degree, and she was older than me. And it was like, wow, we can do stuff. It's like, maybe I can't do the stuff I always used to do, but, we can do stuff. So for 2 years, I went to those meetings, and I cleaned. Actually, it wasn't her, it was her predecessor, but I trained a service dog to help me because there was things I couldn't do, like grocery shop, without some assistance. So she was trained to help me. And I went out on the road alone, but I had friends from my support group who would call me once a week and just talk to me because I was pretty scared out there, and it's a huge change. It's a huge stressor to move from one house to another house for anybody. So for moving from normal housing into a van, and most of you out here have at least considered it if you haven't done it, it's amazingly stressful. And stress is not good if you have these things. And so those people kept me going, and eventually I figured it out. And when I started, I was cycling between hypomania and deep depression multiple times a week. Rapid cycling is 4 times a year. I was cycling more than 52 times a year. I was really sick. And plus I had the anxiety stuff going on. And now, I have been out here for 8 years as of last month, full time. I have not cycled once in 5 years. Doesn't mean I'm cured, it doesn't mean my anxiety is any better, it doesn't mean I'm not still disabled. But oh my goodness, is my life better? And do I have a wonderful life out here? And I never expected that level of improvement, ever. I just thought, at least I'd be out here where things are interesting and scenery's beautiful, and maybe that'll make the pain worthwhile. I gotta tell you, it's been wonderful. And I have watched other people get much better out here. But the thing is, you gotta make it through the first year, and you gotta learn how to live in this totally different environment where if you're not good at talking to people and making friends, you might get too isolated, and that by itself can trip you up and send you back to regular society where it wasn't working very well. And so what I've done now is that lady who started the support groups back home had to withdraw suddenly, and the group needed leadership, and I agreed to take on the leadership, but I told the board, I want you to consider opening up our services to the nomad community, because the nomad community is not well served with peer support. We have meetings all over the country for DBSA, and most of them will welcome you in, by the way. If you need to go to see to it, you can look it up on our national website. But the difference is, you gotta find the meeting, you gotta walk into the strange room, and there's gonna be a room full of strangers. And I've done it, and it's not all that satisfied. It's not the same as going back week after week to the people that you have learned about their lives and become acquaintances and maybe friends. So I wanted that for nomads, and by definition, we can't do that in person all the time because we're not together all the time. So we started the Nomad chapter, and we started designing support and social activities for people who suffer from any kind of different mind issues. Let's call them that. We are incredibly inclusive, and we deal with people with autism, bipolar, plain old depression, anxiety disorders of all type, veterans with PTSD, people like me with complex PTSD. You know, if you don't feel, you know, if you identify with anything like that, and we don't care about diagnoses or labels, because frankly, they're not all that accurate anyway, so who cares? But if you identify as one of us, you are one of us. And we band together and we support each other. We make sure that you know, there's some connection out here, and we get the new people through the first year. We get them, we all are so important to get them through that first year. And we have purpose as well as support by doing that. Everybody supports everybody else, so you're actually doing something good for someone else just by showing up at a phone meeting. You know, those of you who can crochet or teach yoga or whatever, when we get together, we ask that people volunteer to help each other learn wellness techniques. You know, we don't care about the medication and the therapy, somebody else can do that. But let's find ways to do things on the road that help us feel better and be better. And that's what we're doing, and we're growing by leaps and bounds thanks to Bob, because Bob's video really, really made this take off. You know, you need a certain number of people to make this work, and Bob's video brought in that number of people. And we are growing by leaps and bounds. People are really, really happy with our services. People are volunteering. It is going tremendously well. We have a booth over there where we will have a number of our members that you can talk to. And you don't need to, I've been describing serious mental illness to you, okay? And I did that so that you can see that, you know, even someone with serious mental illness out here can get dramatically better. But you do not need to be identifying as having serious mental illness to be one of us. You know, if you're suffering from PTSD and nothing else, that's fine. If you have social anxiety and you're out here getting isolated, you're one of us. If you have autism, Asperger's syndrome, you're one of us, you know, and we can all help each other to help each other out here. And that's what I'm here to ask you to do. So, the best thing to remember, if you remember nothing else from this talk, is nomadchapter.org. And again, that booth over there in the corner, the white booth near the big building over there, you'll see that on our banner. And all our services are documented there. And we have 3 times a week a phone call meeting with optional video. About half the people use the video, half the people just use voice, and we talk to each other. And you know, it can be about mental health, or it can be about some other struggle that you're having in your life, like, you know, you're trying to get your van built out and it's only half built and it's driving you crazy because everything keeps falling down. You know, so we talk about stuff like that. We're not just talking about hypersexuality. We've never talked about hypersexuality. That was back at home, but and we have face-to-face groups, face-to-face events where we come together and learn yoga and talk about what wellness apps we're finding useful and sit around a campfire and maybe, you know, eat some food and that sort of thing. And we have an Our Village group, and this is another thing. If you can remember 2 things, first is nomadchapter.org, and the second is Our Village. And we have a group there called Traveling with Anxiety, Depression, etc. And this is really cool because it's available 24/7, but also because we check into our general area if we feel like it. You can choose not to do this at any time, but we check into the area where we're camping, So that if you look on our village, you would see that I'm in Earp, California, right? You know, I'm camped in Earp, California. But you wouldn't see exactly where. And you can bring up a map of all the people who are in our traveling with anxiety, depression, etc. And if you need to have coffee with someone because you're really feeling down, you might very well be able to find somebody in your area who gets it, who might have a cup of coffee with you. We've had, one member help another member buy a battery because she was just too anxious to make the choice. So he went into the store with her and helped her buy the battery. We've had people have pizza together, that sort of thing. So it's really, really powerful, but it's all optional. And Bob has done a video with Curtis, who is the founder of Our Village, which you can go and see more about that there on his channel. But it's very easy because the only identifying information you give Our Village is your email address. You don't even use your real name. I am beyond SKP on Our Village. So it's you don't have to be handing out your phone number and that sort of thing. And you can message people within there, so you don't even need to, exchange personal information with them until you get to the point where maybe you want to meet them, or whatever. It's very safe, and people really seem to like it, and that's where most of our communication happens about what gatherings we're going to have in the future, and people just post pictures of their dog, and talk about other stuff, and it's just very friendly, and that's what it's all about. Because you heard Bob say that camping with a friend, pull them back from the edge. We want to pull people back from the edge, but we also want to make every single day a little bit more pleasant for people. And we're accomplishing both. And I'd like you to help me to help each other. So I think that's about it.
Very much. I think one of the reasons we work together so well is we have, I think, a common center core. My core is you're not alone. There's someone out here, and you don't have to be alone. And that there's hope. That's everything I'm doing, and I think that's kind of what you're doing.
Absolutely. And service. Service is the other common thing here. And you don't realize it, but you don't have to you don't have to go build a van for somebody to be of service. When you show up and are there and are keeping company, you're being of service.
A smile is all the service a whole lot of people need, and you can all do that. Okay, we'll go ahead and take questions. If you have any questions about any of that, or thoughts, experiences, come forward to the mic. It's right down here. And if you don't want to come down, you can yell, I'll try and repeat your question. Anyone?
Could you repeat the RV Village group, please?
Yeah. Yes, it's RVILLA. I have memory problems. GE.
But what's the group?
Oh, traveling with anxiety, depression, etc. And if you message me on that system, I'm Beyond, BEYOND, SKP. S as in Sam, K as in kite, P as in Peter. I will send you a link to the group so you don't have to go search for it. And you can friend me and you can ask me all the questions you want.
And your other website, you said nomadchapter.org.
Nomadchapter.org.
We have one brave soul.
Yeah.
So I can think how the nomad lifestyle is appealing and might help with the problems you described, which I may share some of. But could you maybe be more specific in your experience what you think it is about the nomad lifestyle that has improved your outlook and your symptoms or problems?
Okay, one thing that I think is critical is that out here, we may not have plumbing, we may not have all the electricity we need, we may not have a lot of the things that the average American has, but we have control over our own life. And for me, that was key. I didn't need a landlord, a boss, a doctor. Doctors can be wonderful, but doctors are also, telling you what to do and what you shouldn't do and that sort of thing. And the freedom of this and the lack of stress from the authority figures allowed me to do the things that I needed to do to become healthy. Out here, I could learn to meditate. It took me a long, 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 long time, but I finally got it. Out here, I could pay a little bit more attention to my diet. Out here, I got more exercise. Out here, I went out in the sunshine more. And I hate to tell you this, guys, but I've yet to find anybody who had the one magic wand cure for psych problems. You have 1,000 different things you do, and eventually some of them start to make you better.
A book I read, and I think I mentioned this in the video, and I have a post on it in my website, cheaprvliving.com, was a book called The Depression Cure, which was written by a man, Stephen Illardi. Does that sound right?
Yes, that's right.
Something like Illardi, something like that. And he has 6 steps towards depression cure. Bold statement saying it's cure, but and debatable. But all of them, almost without exception, are fulfilled by the nomadic life. Get more sun. I mean, it's just a simple scientific fact beyond any dispute. More sun you get, the healthier you're going to be. You're mentally healthier you're going to be. So you get more sun. He said, go get more exercise. I think nearly everyone I know gets more exercise out here. You go for walks, you're more active, you're out and about. He said, be in nature. Well, you're out in nature out here, aren't you? And make connections. Boy, that's one you must do, is learn to make connections. So you're connecting with nature, you're connecting with yourself, and you're connecting with others. And so a lot of what we're doing through HAWA and through my work is making connections. So all of those things, and real connections. How many of you lived, I won't know show of hands, but how many of you live in your house at home? Perhaps you knew the names of the people around you, but nothing more than, hi, how are you today? Well, out here, the bonds are quick and deep. I'm not exactly sure why that's true, but I believe it's true. Out here, the bonds are quick and deep and real. And you will soon, I think most of us will have in 1 year out here, more real connections than we ever had before. Well, that is healing. That is the ultimate in healing. And there are several others. One was diet, and I think your diet doesn't necessarily have to be better, but sometimes it is out here, and it can be if you want it to be. So it's just we live, and that book and everything I've read and I strive to is we are aligning ourselves with the way all humans have always lived. We didn't. When you live nomadically, you're closer to the true lifestyle that humans have always lived. I mean, we lived for millions of years close to nature, traveling with the seasons, traveling with the game, and now we do none of that. We don't, and so just by being closer to a normal, natural rhythm of human life, you're going to be healthier. Those are some of the specific things that I think you will find just by being out here, and why I think nearly universally among people that I've known, been close to, talked to, they're physically healthier and mentally and emotionally healthier and happier out here. And I think those are all the reasons. They're real scientific reasons, and they're just, you do them one at a time, and you don't even give them a thought. They just happen, and you get better. Any other questions? Comments, not just a question. If you have a comment, that'd be great.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Sari. Hi, everybody. I don't like having my back to the group. I'm sorry I heard your story, Bob, and I really, really appreciate you sharing your heartfelt self. And I missed part of your story because I was freezing and had to go get my jacket.
It is cold out here.
I have all of the same stories and all of the same pain, and I think many of us do. And hearing people share that on such a thoughtful and public way is so important in our healing, to get out of the closet with it. And, you know, I went the way of, well, first, you know, trying to kill myself starting at 8. And then when I was 21 and I woke up not dead, I said, okay, no more playing with this. Unless you're really going to put a gun in your mouth and kill yourself, then you don't get to play anymore. And I haven't. And why I was hit with that, I don't know. And then I got sober, and I, you know, did 12 steps, and I've done years and years of therapy. And then I got on medication, and that has been a really hard one for me. And I've gone off numerous times, and because I don't want to have a pill to make me okay. And so I really wanted to share something about that here, because, you know, I mean, I've been in my van for over a year, but I'm living stealth and working, and you know, I had to replace my engine, so it added a few more months to rebuilding my pot. And but the last time I tried to go, I had to go off of my medication because I lost my Medi-Cal. I was surprised at how bad I got, and I had to accept that, you know, for me there is a chemical imbalance, and whether or not it's alcohol, fetal alcohol syndrome or whatever, it doesn't really matter. But, you know, I have felt a lot of kind of, well, you come out here and you eat better, and, you know, so then you don't take pills anymore, and all of that kind of stuff. And I just want to speak to that I do eat better, and I do meditate, and I do pray, and I do connect with people, and all of that stuff, and I still have to take pills to be okay. And that, and I don't want to be in the closet about it, and I want to help anybody who's out here that feels like they have to not tell anybody they're on antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications, or 2 or 3 antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications. Doesn't mean you're not a real nomad, doesn't mean you're not a real person, and doesn't mean you're not healing.
And see, this is why we want you. Okay, there's my path that worked for me. Doesn't mean it works for you. Your path doesn't work for me. Doesn't mean it's not working for you. And there's so much that is not dependent on whether or not you take meds. Whether or not you take meds, it's nice to learn meditation and be out here and trying to get high. It doesn't matter, you know, and we're not into telling people what to do. When we have a meeting, we would speak in I statements, and so perhaps you might answer a question that says, well, when that happens, I look to make sure that I've taken my meds. And I might answer, when that happens, I look to see if I've been sleeping properly, and, you know, whether I've been too much time in front of people or whatever. But notice it's I. It is not you should be taking medication. It is not you should be looking at your lifestyle. Because there are many, many different routes to recovering from this stuff and getting our lives back and making our lives as best worth living as we possibly can. And there is no right and wrong. There is no right and wrong. And we take people who are taking pot, we take people who are taking prescription meds, we take people who take nothing, we take alcoholics who are in recovery, alcoholics who are not in recovery, people who are using street drugs. We don't care. That's not what we're about. We're not about the substances we do or don't use. We're not about what religion everybody is. You know, talking to God can be, you know, a wonderful thing for one person, and, you know, the other one's an atheist, and that's okay. You know, but the thing is, we all share common things. That day you can't get out of the van because you're feeling so bad. That has nothing to do with antidepressants or meditation or sleeping or any of that other stuff. And it's a powerful thing to add to whatever it is you're doing to try to make your life better, no matter how you're doing that.
Somebody asked me yesterday what I was looking for in being in the van and this lifestyle and all of that. And what's true for me is that I don't have a back to go to when it comes to the definition of a life. I have to create it at 64. And for the first time, I don't have to pay rent. I own my own home.
Right.
And I never thought that would be. I get to do my one of two dreams, which is to travel the United States in an RV. The other was be a mom, and I got that. And thus far, he's still with me. But there is no back to a normal life or back to an experience of self. I'm having to discover it. And I'm getting to discover it. And that's really, really different. I've never felt so safe in my entire life than living alone in my van with my dogs, of course, and my bird, and but I never thought I would ever know that, and that's what this has given me. With the air and the exercise and eating better and eating less, and the first thing that I really missed was wasting hot water to wash my hands.
So come join us and come help us give hope
I will.
to those people who are out here for the first time and they think they've made a mistake.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Sir, are you waiting? This gentleman's next, and then we'll form a line. And what time is it? It's 10 till 4, so we need to get through quickly.
Okay.
Thank you. My name's Tom. I'm also 64. So yeah, back-to-back 64s, that's good. And Joanne, I wanted to say to you that is so phenomenal that you've been able to recover so dramatically from where you were to where you are, just from changing your lifestyle like that.
It's amazing. And again, I don't want to, I'm not well. I'm just a lot better.
Yeah, and I was thinking, how can we get that message out to the rest of the world? Like, get people out of their, the rat race and get them to make this transition.
That would be his wheelhouse.
I'm doing everything I can.
You're using the internet, Bob. You're getting the message out, and it's an incredible message you have of love and community. I want to thank you for that. And I'm happy for you, Joey. I'm really happy that
I'm happy too.
It's just but I was thinking, okay, we could consider these people that are in these homeless encampments, they're almost like our brothers and sisters that are out there as well. I was just thinking about that, and they're kind of, looked down on, and, well, they're victims of their own, circumstances or drugs or whatever, But it's almost like if we could set up a shuttle, and take these people out of these encampments and bring them out into the desert in the winter for some hour, could we finance something like that just to give them a breather from living in the cities or wherever they are, and go and load up a bus with them and bring them out here, and just, because all these city managers, they're all looking for an answer to homelessness, and they're putting millions and millions of dollars into this effort, right? And none of them are able to figure it out, and all they have to do is move out here and forget about the vans and, you know, we could get them set up in a tent or whatever and or they could live under the stars, you know, just, you know, take a break from that day-to-day struggle in those cities.
Yeah, let me go ahead and just try and give you a quick answer. We're doing one thing. We are working to prevent homelessness. Homes on Wheels Alliance does not actually work with the homeless, people who are already homeless, really at all. And that isn't what we're doing. I don't have any answer for the homeless, none whatsoever. I don't know that anyone does. But if you try to solve the world's problems, we'll fail it totally. So we are a narrow focus at helping people to prevent becoming homeless by getting them on wheels. And for those of you who are on wheels, we work to enhance your life and make it better in the many ways we do. So yeah, we're pretty focused, and that's just not something we can't do it. It's a big problem. We can't do everything. Well, we have several people. Yes, please, come on. So whoever's next, we'll go next. Yeah, but please come up. And we do need to make them short.
I wanted to thank you for this opportunity. I am still in a home. I live in Pennsylvania, where it's very snowy and icy right now, and I'm glad I'm not there. And I've been watching your channel. I'm a subscriber, Bob, for about 4 years now. And I watched your video with Joanne, and I had decided when I came out here to volunteer, to do a breakout session on overcoming tragedy. Grief, loss, and tragedy are some very life-changing things to experience. I also lost a son to a motorcycle accident 10 years ago, but he was 22. He was my oldest, and that was probably the most challenging, difficult trauma I had to go through. Also went through a 4-year divorce I didn't think was ever going to end. It did finally end, but losing a child is heart-wrenching and soul breaking. And just wanted to share a couple things that can be helpful if we always remember that we were created for a reason, and we're here for a reason, and we're special, and we have purpose, and to invest in someone else's life. As we start to invest in someone else, and you all probably have met or seen my beautiful daughter, Emily. I received her through adoption, and just investing into her and getting outside of myself and see some of the needs of other people, or volunteering in other ways, like here volunteering, or even getting a pet, someone else you can get your focus on to care for and be responsible for, can help. And also sharing with yourself affirmations every day. Talk to yourself and tell yourself about your worth, and you know, we're always cutting ourselves down, and it seems like we have a society where if we say good things about ourselves, we're called cocky or arrogant or prideful or full of ourselves. And that's not, it's not a bad thing to have to understand your self-worth and know who you are, because then you can feel more confident and secure to give to others. And that's what really I think is one of our great missions here. Why we are here is to give to others and help other people feel better about themselves, and then
Ma'am,
hopefully some of these other things will fall away.
I'm sorry, but you can't just tell your whole story here. Maybe get a couple of key points in.
I did.
Okay,
I'm finished.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing them. That's really good.
I'd just like to say thank you so much for everything that you do here. It's so great that everything and what everyone's does, because even though, Bob, I know you can't do everything, but everything that anybody can do to help one another, be strengthening each other and helping one another. If you guys want to start a program to help people, because there's so many people that need help, especially today with mental illness being ever growing, thing that, more and more homeless people and more mental illness and more thing in the government and the people and in society is just kind of pushed it away, don't really understand the need of mental illness today. And because we all been hurt, we all have headaches and hangovers. I think it's just really important for us to just let go of our baggage and pick up love, because everybody's in pain. Just like if you have a toothache, and when you were a child, your parents would pick you up, and take you by your hand. And it may take a little while, but then eventually you will get help. There's so many people that need help and they have nowhere to turn, and everywhere they go, they get pushed away. And in the result of that, they hurt many people, because they lash out and they hurt people and do many things. And I've been hurt. My house was burned down, my goats was been stolen and killed, and by people that I am trying to help. But I keep on, my heart is out there for those people, and I still want to go out there, and for some reason I still want to help. And we've all got to do what we can to help one another become the best people we can be. And 10 years ago, I started the Walk for the Homeless on 12/21. It is part of my organization, the Rockville Foundation. And it's funny, when the city that I did it in, of course, they said deny my application to do the Walk for the Homeless. And I say, well, we have a right to assemble under the Constitution. And no matter where we go, we got to come together, because it's our right to come together under the Constitution, to better each other, and to stand up and believe in what we are believing. And and of course, one person can't do everything, but there's many of us that need help, and there's many more that can help. And everybody needs help, and everyone can help.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So my name is Erick the Goat Guy. You can look me up on YouTube. I make videos literally right now and there all the time. And so thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's on, there we go. Okay, get closer, get closer to the mic. Okay, what I want to share with you, I'll try to be brief about it, is just a resource that worked for me that helps me. And I'll give you a quick backstory. Everybody want to go home and everything like that. I suffered with anxiety and depression my whole life. I mean, I had my first bout at 12 years old and tried to kill myself at 18, and all through life. I'm really nervous. Oh my God. Anyhow, and so that's my backstory. And so then I discovered meditation and became a Buddhist and everything like that. And then it still wasn't really helping me all the way. And, I'm like technology, I like apps. And so I found a guru in India called Sadhguru, and he's got apps. It's the Isha Foundation. You can easily, the app works really well. You can easily find it. And you can, what he has is a methodology. So if you're not good at yoga, if you're not good at meditation, if you have problems like this, I've got one of these minds where I've got 5 thoughts going on at the same time and music running in at the same time and whatnot. And even I can do this. So I know it's not for everybody, but it really, really works. And just real quick again, last year about this time I had a bout of depression that was so bad I couldn't move. I was laying on the couch, I couldn't move, and like the big impossible task was making myself breakfast. Okay, I mean, that was the impossible, because when you're depressed, you have an impossible task, and it could be going to the bank, going to the grocery store, or something like that, and that's your life, and you just can't get off the couch. And so I found this guy on YouTube, and there's lots of videos. It's a very good resource, and it works really well. And it just teaches you how to get a separation between your thoughts, and it's like, instead of being in the river and you're being drowned, it's taking you away. You get out of the river and you look at the river. You get higher up the mountain, you look down at the mountain. So it exists. Your anxiety, your depression, your thoughts, your whatever, they exist, but you're not attached to them. You're not emotionally in there. So what it is, just basically, it's apps at work, videos at work, and methodology that help me. Okay?
Thank you so much. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Thank you all. That was very, very helpful. So thank you for coming. There's nothing else? We're done?
You're done.
We're done.
Go over and see us at the booth.
Yes. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Please like, subscribe, and share. Bob's on cheap RV living. That's Bob Scheich himself. And I'm Eric the Goat Guy. Please subscribe to both our YouTube channels, and make sure you hit the like button and share. And this has been one touching experience. So thank you guys so much. Eric.